with Grant Napier. Hey, before I begin, I just want to thank everyone for all of your support this year. It's been incredible. The other night after the Lakers game, Ryan and I were right here on YouTube Live and across all three platforms. We had over 22,000 people watching our post-game show. So I want to say thank you. I hope you have a fabulous holiday. And I think you're going to really enjoy today's show with Sean Salisbury coming up in just a moment. It's brought to you by New Works Plumbing of Sacramento. Locally owned for over 20 years, New Works has a fix for you for your plumbing needs and repairs. Just go to sacserviceplumbing.com or call the number on your screen. And remember, if you happen to have an emergency in the middle of the night, no problem. They'll be there with their 24/7 service. That's sacserviceplumbing.com. Again, coming up in just a moment, I will talk. And we'll talk not only football, but we'll talk about some holiday spirit. It's all coming up in a moment with Sean Salisbury. Oh, yes, indeed. If you don't like that, and we say hello to Sean Salisbury. Sean, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and it doesn't look like it's very warm in Houston, Texas either.
Yeah, with the wind chill, it's in the teens. Merry Christmas, happy holidays to you too. But you know what? You got to brave it, brother. Out there, you got to do what you got to do. I played in worse, so I'm good. I'm warm and everything's fine. So all well.
It's all well, unless you're a Jets fan. If you're a Jets fan, not all is well. And if you're a fan of Zach Wilson, oh, my goodness. How bad was that last night, Sean?
Not good. And, Grant, he's the perfect example. You know, who doesn't root for guys to be successful? Of course you do. But he's a perfect example of the stuff we talk about on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. Can't make the easy play. He doesn't make it enough. He cannot make the common play. Or at least he's proven so far early in his career that he can't. And you can't live by the spectacular, and he doesn't do enough of that. If you make the common play, you can survive it. He's not doing enough of that. And when the backups come in, they seem to play better. So something's amiss from not only from Zach's game, but from the way the offense approaches it when he's in the game.
So you just made the key point to me. When his backups are in, they play better. And so that looks bad for Wilson. If the backups came in and played the same, I would say, okay, well, you've got a problem with the offensive line, which they do. Can't run the ball, don't have skilled people or whatever. But you know, we see Mike White come in, and the guy looks like a completely different quarterback, and he's with the same personnel as Zach Wilson.
Yeah, and Streveler, who comes in, although they didn't score, he didn't throw a touchdown pass. I'll tell you what, two things, Grant. One is they recognize that in their short, they don't get a lot of preparation, but they recognize that keeping chains moving gives you a chance. Now, Jacksonville's playing pretty damn good football, and I actually think they're going to win the division, but they recognize their limitations. It feels to me like this is something when you lose confidence at the position, you start to force things. You start to grip things a little harder. And if you're faint of heart and I know he's confident, but New York and playing poorly can bury your confidence in a hurry, Grant. You know that being from there. You know how you have to, at that position, you got to have Boomer Esiason toughness, Joe Namath, the ability to just shake off that stuff. And right now, he's not doing it. And he knows it. But there's only so much you can do to put limitations on him. And he's got to start to, if he would start to go about the game as, I don't have a strong arm, let me see how else I can beat you, it might change. And he came into the league because of all the stuff he did in shorts and a T-shirt. And, you know, they watched him at BYU. He did well, but we got intrigued with his ability. Now we need to be intrigued with his accuracy, because right now his accuracy is baffling. And you cannot start in this league and be successful completing 40, 50, 55% of your passes. It's not going to work.
Sean, I want to go in a different direction for a few moments with Christmas and the holiday weekend. I had you on my podcast about 2 years ago, and you chronicled the story of your Christmas morning when you were at rock bottom and your decision to pick up a homeless person on the side of the road, Russell. And his life obviously has been changed forever, but your life was changed. And I think when you reflect back as we approach this weekend, I would think you think about that moment and that decision quite often. When you think about that Christmas morning, Again, I know how Russell's life was changed. Sean, how was your life changed by that experience?
Well, Grant, thanks for asking. I feel like I've always been and because of the way I was raised, compassionate. I did, but I also know that we all get into a point we feel sorry for ourselves. And on that particular day in 2014, on Christmas Day 2014. I was driving home after visiting with my children, who were going to be Christmas with their mother the next day. I was coming back to Houston on a 4-hour drive, in about 45 minutes, and I've chronicled this, outside of Dallas. I drove by him about 10 miles, came back and picked him up. He was walking down the highway with a duffel bag, and he had told me he was walking from St. Louis, Missouri. And I said, get in. To make a long story short, I tried to stop 2 different times to drop him off, give him money, and feed him. It didn't work. For one, he needed to be inside what we call the loop in Houston so he could take the bus to where he was going to go. He was going to spend the colder months, because it's warmer in Texas and not in Missouri, hanging out at Home Depot, getting day jobs to earn a living. He didn't have a driver's license, a Social Security card, or any ID, or a birth certificate. And I said, where are you going to sleep when we were driving? And he said, I was my sleeping bag under a tree. And I thought his family and him were at a distance. He wasn't seeing anybody. And so I just had him stay at my house, and I was going to take him the next day. 16 months later, he had done drugs in the past, but never did drugs from the time I saw him. He said he'd been off him. He had about 4 teeth in his head. We got him all new teeth, a driver's license, a Social Security card, and a birth certificate. Over the next 60 months, him and I became friends, and he went back, got reconciled with his family, and he's living in Missouri again, where he came from. And it was supposed to be temporary. Wasn't even going to have him stay with me, but I was feeling sorry for myself driving home because I wasn't with my kids on Christmas Day. Stayed the night in Dallas after spending Christmas Eve with them. Woke up the next morning and thought, this sucks to be me, man. I'm driving 4 hours, and all of a sudden I run into him, drive by him, and go back and pick him up. Wanted to give him money, and it was odd, but it said, get your butt back and pick him up, because I gave him money and drove back and picked him up. And 16 months later, we developed a friendship. So I guess to do all that stuff, to know what it takes to get to what he was going through in his life, I was thinking, man, my problem's pale in comparison.
Mm-hmm.
I know what rock bottom looks like, and it's relative. Everybody's got their rock bottom, whatever it is. And for me, it was a sign. It was, people say I changed his life. But the truth is, he changed mine, because I had gone through what was the worst stretch in my life. I lost a dad. I lost a house. Just before that, I'd been divorced. I slept in my truck about 100 times that year. I everything. And when I picked him up, I was just starting to get back into, I was about 9 to 10 months into getting my life. I felt good. I just started again. And I wondered if I was ever going to get my career back. And as I was driving, I thought, I got health. All my kids are healthy. I can do this. And 16 months later, we became friends. And my life will never be the same because of it, because when I thought about what he was doing with his life,
yeah,
I thought, and it's brought me to tears many times thinking about it, but I didn't know what I was getting into when I brought him in. And I know what the blessing was when he went home 16 months later. It was one of the best things I've ever done, not just for him. I'm talking about what he did for me, understanding what compassion is. My kids loved him. He spent Christmas with us. My kids became buddies with him. It was a special time for us. They ask about him all the time, and I'll never, ever feel sorry for myself in a situation again, because I look at that situation. I'm not sleeping under a tree in a sleeping bag. He was, and I'm grateful we could get it all done and get him back with his family after 16 months.
Sean, you said something to me during that podcast that really resonated with me. You said when you were at rock bottom, the one thing that really helped you, maybe as much as anything, was doing really good deeds for other people. That helping out other people warmed your heart, started to heal your heart, where you were able to move up from rock bottom.
Well, Grant, it's such a great point, and it's a lesson for all of us. And when I share this story, it was never for people to pat me on the back. Hell, no. I didn't do much. I picked the guy up because I went from feeling sorry for myself to acting like what a good, normal citizen should do. It was cold that day. Pick somebody up who's hitchhiking along the freeway on Christmas Day. And I felt like a heel when I drove by him the first time for about 10 miles, and I came back and I did what most I would hope do. But the story for me moving forward was, And I've got countless, hundreds of people after they heard the story say, you know what, Sean, I bought somebody a meal that day, or I gave somebody $100. And it's not for me to decide what they're going to do with that $100, Grant, or when you buy them a meal. It's not from, when we say, well, they're just going to go spend it on alcohol. I don't know. He wasn't. I don't know why, and I don't know what they're going to do with it. I just know compassion matters, and you never know whose life you're going to change. And for him and for me, it changed both of us. And you're exactly right. And it was to share the story so somebody else would pay it forward, and he'll pay it forward too. I watched him do it when he was living with me to somebody else, and him become more kind and compassionate, because he had every reason in his life to be bitter, and a lot of it self-inflicted, Grant. But I wasn't willing. I had to chew his ass sometimes too about we're not feeling so. I mean, I had to get on him like we were brothers, like we had been around. And he was older than I was, but it kind of shaped both of us. But I did. The thing that helped me the most was not immersing myself into making me feel better. I immersed myself into to try and make a difference in somebody else's life, whether it was that or the other things we were doing. And the best recovery for me in my life from rock bottom was jumping into somebody else's life and helping them get out of their rock bottom, which in turn got rid of your thoughts and pouting and your feeling sorry for myself to get out of my rock bottom. And it literally changed on a dime. That's how fast it changed.
Sean, I read the message that I received from a listener of that podcast that was going through a similar situation and despair. And he sounded suicidal. And he talked about, after listening to your story, that he got reinvigorated. He also reunited with his family and started to change his life around just based on your story. And I think that's so fabulous because, there are a lot of people that we see on social media that seem perfect. I'm still waiting to meet a perfect person. Everyone's got issues. Everyone's got problems. As we sit here on this holiday season, maybe we've got someone right now, Sean, that's at rock bottom, whatever the situation. Maybe they're going through a divorce. Maybe they lost their job. Maybe they're close to being homeless, whatever the case may be. What's the best advice you would give someone that's in despair right now?
And Grant, first of all, you sharing that story makes me feel good, because I got countless messages too that you can feel when people are willing to show their life and be transparent, when they're questioning if they want to go grab a gun and end their life. It's kind of scary. People you don't know. When you're getting those messages on your inbox, and I got countless messages. I still, to this day, and the story, I don't share it every Christmas unless somebody asks. But I still get it. I had a guy ask me on the radio 2 days ago, Grant, on my show, Sean, I just want to be a reminder of what went on at the Christmas, because it made a difference in my life. I hear that, and it's not for me. It's knowing that along the way, no matter what I did, two things: as long as I could help Russell, and in turn it helped me. But if somebody was listening that day or listening to your podcast when you brought it up, and it saved a life, then it was worth everything.
Absolutely.
It really was. Any dime that I spent, any amount of money when you're frustrated. And we used to sit up at night, Grant, till 2 a.m. watching St. Louis Cardinals baseball after we tape it, because he was a diehard baseball fan, right? And a great historian too. I learned from the guy as well. The advice I would give is, just when I thought, Grant, stuff that I never talked about. There was times when I hit my rock bottom that I can remember one time, and I was never a big drinker. I like to have a drink. I can remember one time waking up, and I was so beat down and achy I'd had surgery on my back, like not invasive, but enough to required a few painkillers. And I was at Christmas alone leading up to it. I didn't have much money. And I can remember sitting on my toilet, my body was aching, and all over, like the pre-flu ache, but it wasn't the flu. You know what I'm saying? And it was a little bit hungover because I drank because I was feeling sorry for myself. And I can remember thinking, I don't know if I can get to tomorrow. I remember thinking it. And I had a great family, but when you do that, you keep it from your mom, right? You just don't share. And I was that guy. And I can remember at times thinking, I can't get through this. My career, I was embarrassed. I wanted to be there for it, all those things. So you try to hide it, and it starts to fester. And so I guess the number one thing I could do the two things that'll help you. One is be around good people that uplift you. But secondly, that you can't quit. I wanted to. Every time I got to go, there wanted to, and I said, you know what, I can't do this. But then I thought about what would I do if I couldn't go any further, and what would my family and kids, how would it affect the rest of their life if I quit? And my dad, I didn't come from a family that quit. And my dad would have, if he would have been alive during that time, my dad would have had my ass sucking buttermilk. He would have been, he would have said, that's not how we do it here, with compassion. But he would have let me know that I meant more to people than at the time I thought I did. We all go through the ebbs and flows, but and it's hard to immerse yourself into helping somebody else because you're too busy feeling sorry for yourself. But I did. And then to know, and I had people tell me, just take it another day. And I'll be damned if some prayer and some good friends around you, it all of a sudden started to turn around. And I felt myself going and helping and giving and sometimes I was down to my last couple bucks. And if somebody else needed it, I gave it. And I was sleeping on a couch and pulling into a parking lot of a hotel and not having the money to go check in, but sleeping in your truck, but you're too embarrassed to ask a friend or family member for money. It was tough times, man. And it's not for anybody to feel sorry for me, but if I'm sending this message to somebody else, there's always hope.
Yeah.
You're only hopeless when you quit. And I'm there for anybody that needs it because it is a hard lesson. But I promise once you've been there, instead of digging a hole to get out, build steps to climb out. And that's how I did it, step by step.
Sean, 25 years ago, I had the pleasure of going to Bristol, Connecticut about 3 weekends every month during the NBA lockout to host co-host ESPN Game Night with Tony Bruno, and got to meet all the fellas. And one of the guys I did a lot of shows with on Saturday night was John Clayton, and got to know John. And we'd go across the street with Tony and John and a couple of the fellows after our 1 a.m. exit, and we'd have some beer and we would talk. And, I got to know John. I didn't get to know John like you, but we lost John this year. And this will be the first Christmas you're not getting a Merry Christmas from John. And the impact of John on your life and being around someone who was never about himself. It's funny, Sean, after I did that 6 months at ESPN Radio, I did my own show in Sacramento, obviously. And whenever I needed John, whenever something big happened, I said, John, can you give me 10 minutes on the radio? John, not once with his crazy schedule, ever said no. He might have said, I can't do it right now, but I can do it here and I can do it here. He was just, didn't have an ego. He would talk to anyone about anything. What did John Clayton mean to you, Sean?
Family. My first year, my rookie year in Seattle, John and I met. He was a beat writer in Seattle for the Seahawks. And we established a friendship. But then it came to big fruition when we both worked together, and they came up with this 4 Downs idea that was the original of all these debate shows. I don't mean it as a pat on the back. It was the original. And John was so proud of it, Grant, and so was I, because we didn't know if it worked. And not only did it work, I mean, from the CEO and the boss, George Bodenheimer, right on down, everybody, we get messages of people, him wanting his like nieces and nephews wanted, or his kids wanted autographs. Like, this is crazy. And while I know it was the way what people thought, well, we didn't like each other, it was never scripted. John and I had the utmost respect for both and how we worked in our families and our approach, but it worked because we didn't script it. We never just had to agree or disagree because somebody told us to. And I'll tell you about John. I do miss him. It's been a rough year, the Mike Leach and John Clayton before then. And I know a lot of people lose people they care about, and it's not good. But the one thing about John, and it helps me in my life too, John, I can never remember anything other about John. I mean, I remember a lot about John, is the way John, and it's the way with people, Grant, this, people don't care if you were right or wrong on something, or if you gave them a buck or two. People care how you made them feel.
Mm-hmm.
And John Clayton always made me feel important. And I hope I did the same for him. But John Clayton made everybody feel important. If you're in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and you're an intern that had somebody starting their first job on radio, John would do a hit for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you are exactly right. I promise you, as I'm sitting here today, that if I was in Minnesota and I called John and said, John, I need you here, and I also need you to bring me a shirt, And I know that sounds hyperbolic. He would have found a way to get it done. I have never met a man in this. I know a lot of people that work hard, the two things, whose ego was bigger than his talent. It was not John. John's talent was better than his ego. Trust me. And which is saying something. And John Clayton was the most giving man with his time, and not ever expecting you to do something for him in return. He is the epitome. When you read that quote, that's true, is that you give something of somebody or give of yourself, not expecting anything in return. Amen. And it helped me with Russell, because with Russell, I never expected anything in return other than to help him, and hopefully he paid it forward and we developed a friendship. With John, I've been in this business now, Grant, you have too, for 30 years. And as a football player, I have never met a man who was as popular and had a lot to do, and a million people wanted his time, who never expected anything in return and would have done anything for it. He would have treated the CEO just like he treats an intern. We hear people talk. That was John in a nutshell. And I'm going to tell you something. We all talk about loving our significant other, our wife, our parents. John Clayton and his good wife, Pat, his ability to make sure that she knew he was there all the time, and then find a way, if he had to fly in and do something, go back and make sure Pat was okay. You look up whatever it is in the dictionary that says somebody who cares about others for no other reason other than he just cares. It's John Clayton, and I miss him dearly. I got news for you. There's a seat right next to my dad and God in heaven, if you believe in heaven, and John Clayton sitting in one of them. Nobody, at no time, I used to go on a show, but John never expected anything from you because he did something for you. And he was a special human being, and our stuff was raw and real. And I know there's a lot of good ones. I don't think it'll ever be duplicated because it wasn't manufactured.
That's so well said. I'll never forget walking into ESPN for the first time on a Saturday, and my very first show, I'm in there with Tony Bruno. And I mean, I'm not going to lie to you, Sean. I was like, oh my God, Tony was the god of national sports talk radio.
No doubt.
And I met John that afternoon, and he made me feel like I was Chris Berman, for crying out loud. I mean, he
Dan
talked
Patrick,
to me.
exactly.
He wanted to know about me. And here's something else I remember, and a guy that who's doing so well right now. When I was there in 1998 doing game night, Ian Fitzsimmons was one of our interns, and Ian's doing great now. He's all over the place on ESPN. He's doing great. And I remember hanging out with John and Ian, who was an intern, and you're 100% correct. He would treat Chris Berman and the intern the exact same way. And you're right about John. When you just listening to, I was like, wow, that's right. John was he was settling me down. He knew my situation. He was a basketball fan and was talking to me about the Kings. And again, we were having a lockout then. Asked me where I was from. Genuinely was asking me questions, and it was so comforting. But then I remember hanging out with Ian and John, and it really didn't matter to John. He was going to hang out with you, and he was one of the fellas. Sean, that's the best way I can say. Yep. John was just one of the fellas.
No agenda.
No.
Hard to find. The world was a worse place when John Clayton died, I'm telling you. Yeah. And you find me somebody who has a bad thing to say about John Clayton. Find me somebody. You will
there's
never.
Something wrong with that person. There's something wrong with that person.
That's exactly right. You will find nobody. He is as generous with his time as any man on the planet, and obviously he's missed. I love him, and he was family to me, and I know that, like I said, he made you feel the same way as he made me feel, and I have known John since 1986. That's a rare trait, and John had it.
If John were watching right now, would go, guys, shut the hell up, and could you please talk about the Philadelphia-Dallas game and how
right.
You know that.
Sean and Grant, move on. I don't want to talk about this, but I think he knew. Right. I think he knew how much we loved him. And you know what I loved about him?
Yeah.
Grant, he was even when it was over, he was one of the first guys that called me when I went through my ESPN stuff and left, and I had nothing but great times there. He called me immediately, and I know even to the day he died that he, like I said earlier, he was so proud because he was popular. And in truth, I could say this, and you're the former player, and John was like the bully versus the the nerd is how they kind of created it.
Right.
John's the reason 4 downs worked. I mean, I was an analyst. I was kind of myself opinionated. I didn't have to act, and John didn't act either. But John's what made it work. He had some phenomenal one-line zingers.
Yep.
It was not scripted. He's the reason why. John may be one of the true reasons why these debate shows, we may have been the original, but John made it work. And I couldn't have been more proud of him and what we accomplished together. I miss it. And I know he did too.
Well, I still think it's one of the best segments in the history of ESPN and SportsCenter, the 4 downs.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on, John. We hear you, John. We're going to move on.
That's right.
How do you think the Eagles will be impacted with Jalen Hurts? How different will they look against the Cowboys?
They're going to look different because they're going to lose a lot of the ability to play you horizontally, meaning on the inside zone and the read option and get on the edge with Jalen Hurts, who right now is probably operating that about as good as anybody in sports. You know what I'm saying, Grant? Mm-hmm. He can throw off it. He can run off it. He's got that triple hand it, keep it, throw it, and he's doing it really well. And they have got him playing at a top level, but they're not going to lose a lot of accuracy with Minshew. He's a veteran that he feels like he's been in the league like 9 years, right? Minshew. So I think you'll see calm. I don't think you're going to see Sirianni back off too much. They may change a few things, mix it in. The threat of the Cowboys now being able to compress the edge a little bit, knowing that Minshew's not going to beat you. But listen, when Minshew had Mike Leach, speaking of another guy we lost way too soon, Minshew's accurate and he knows where to throw the football. And he's right now probably a more advanced thrower than Hurts because he's been doing it longer as far as, in a system. So I would listen, if you're telling me can the Cowboys be beat by Gardner Minshew and the Philadelphia Eagles?
Yes, they can.
You're damn right they can. They sure can. And Minshew is starting, unless I heard something different. Minshew's starting, right, Grant?
Yeah, I think so. But yes. Right. And here's the other deal about this game. There's a lot of pressure on Dak Prescott. All right. After what last week, the loss to Jacksonville was bad. Now, all of a sudden, you got your rival. You're probably not going to catch them, but you have to win if you're going to catch them. Prescott needs to play very well in this game, or you know what the narrative's going to be.
Oh, no doubt. And Grant, they're also, you're trying to position yourself. The Vikings have a better record than they do right now than the Cowboys. You're trying to position yourself. What is it? Cowboys 10-4, I think, right, Grant? And the Vikings 11-3. I think I'm right there. I'm pretty sure. But the bottom line is you're trying to get not momentum, but confidence going into the postseason. And one thing I want to see, not just Prescott, I get a little bit flabbergasted with who Kellen Moore is. I've told you this about 8 weeks ago or 7 weeks ago, Grant. Remember during when Cooper Rush was the quarterback, I said, I need to know if Kellen Moore wants to prove to the world he's a head coach, so he's going to throw it all over the place, or play within what they do. Their identity should be running the ball. And we're going to find out. Quit trying. You don't need to prove to the world, the ego, that, yeah, Dak's our guy. We know Dak's a guy. Put him in position to be successful. And I'm keeping a close eye on that, because I'm going to tell you what, Philadelphia's defense will be relentless. And Dak is facing that, okay, when's he going to rise up at this time of year? And that's what he's facing, no doubt.
Want to say hello to everybody on the stream, and thank you so much for your support. We got Eduardo watching in Chile. We got Melissa watching in the UK. We welcome the people that are able to join us, not only in the good old US of A, but around the world. Really appreciate that. And Sean,
I want to thank all the people for the great comments. You guys are awesome. I'm past the point. I used to be a little nervous to share stories that delve deep into your soul. But if you can't do that, the only way I know how to make a difference is share with somebody what I lived. And so if it helps somebody else, I'm not afraid to share anything that I lived through.
You know what, Sean? Our lives begin to end the day we remain silent about things that matter. MLK. And I've met a lot of people, and I've seen a lot of bullshit, and I've seen a lot of people that, are doing things for the wrong reasons. And I've never, ever once thought about you. When you had the hurricane come through Houston and you figured out a way to get down to the church and figure out, why isn't this open? Why are we not, you didn't really, you're doing things because you have to, because it's the right thing to do. And you don't care about what people are going to say about you. You don't care about you're doing what you believe is right. and you've always stood for right. And I probably respect you more for that than anything else.
And I haven't done much good in my life. I think I've been a good dad, and I try to be, giving to others. But Grant, you're right. I mean, I've been cussed out enough. I've thrown enough interceptions to know there's not much worse you could say about me that's already been said. So if along the way I can impact or help somebody out, I'll do it. And it's another holiday season. That's why I say at this time of year to be kind, because the people that are going through difficult times, and I'll raise my hand for one of them at the time I went through it, they can fool you. My good friend Junior Seau, and I mean this with affection because I love him, fooled us, his closest friends. We cried, my buddy and I, Mark Walzak, who was a teammate of mine in Indy and a teammate of Junior's in San Diego before I became a teammate of Junior's in San Diego. We called and cried with each other on the phone because Junior was always immersed into making sure you were happy. I'll never forget it. Yeah, always, Grant, my whole life with Junior, whenever he'd see me, he'd hug me and give me a kiss. And that's his Hawaiian way. And it wasn't like, sometimes I'd say, well, what am I supposed to say to Seau? He's not allowed to peck me on the lips. What am I going to do? Fight him? So we used to laugh about it. And he would hug me and give me a peck on the lips. And I can remember when I was going through my times, he called me, he goes, I need to see more of you. And when Junior told you he needed something, he needed to see, he wasn't joking. He goes, Sal's, I need to see more of you. And little did I know that he was going through and we've always stayed close. And so when my buddy Mark Walzak, who was his best friend, I cried on the phone because he said, Sean, what else could we have done? Because Junior, Grant, the day before, he's a guy who's out surfing and working out in the morning, make it happy. He always made sure everybody else was happy. And in the end, we didn't realize the struggles he was going through. So I just say, be kind, because all the other bullshit really doesn't matter, because we got to spend more time telling people how we care about them and what we think of them in a good way while they're alive, instead of regretting or wondering why we didn't talk to them or find out while they're dead. So it's and I know he knew I loved him, but there's people out there that are standing right next to you that are going to go home to something that you think they're going home to good and they're not, or they're without something. So I don't make much of an impact, Grant, but whenever I can, I sure as hell try. And I know I do it for the right reasons, and hoping that somebody else will pay that forward to somebody else.
Talking about making an impact, Franco Harris made an impact in the NFL. You being a Raider fan, the Immaculate Reception. He was on with my good friend Christopher Mad Dog Russo the day before he passed, gone way too soon at age 72. I think back to those teams, how many great players, how many Hall of Famers were on that team, but how a guy that played the game the right way, and apparently, and I never knew him, but just based on everyone and the outpouring of emotion, lived life the right way and seemed to be, just a perfect, and I say perfect, but just a great person.
Phenomenal human being. I've been fortunate to meet him at some events and part of his family. And I'm going to tell you, Grant, gentle, just a good, matter of fact, so nice. And you see this in a lot of great players. So nice. You're saying, how is he that good a player? Aren't you supposed to be meaner or that? You know what I mean? And he was just such a gentleman. And I was completely shocked because I'd never heard anything was wrong. And I don't know if we even know the full cause yet. I haven't heard it. I've been running around all day. I have not, but no. He was beloved wherever he went. And we know about him in Pittsburgh. And well, and here on the 50th anniversary, two quick things, Grant. I know you got to get rolling, but
no, it's good.
I can remember where I was when I was not. I didn't like Franco for a long time, and I mean it affectionately because as a diehard Raider fan, sitting in Phoenix, Arizona, 9 years old, and we had a back alley to our house on 3237 West Weathersfield Road. Now, wow. I'm a wealth of useless knowledge, Grant. I am a wealth of useless knowledge. I can remember that day, and I don't cry much at sporting events, but at 9 years old, you're emotional, right? Yep. The Raiders were my team. Terry scrambled left, scrambled right, and threw the ball, and thinking that it hit off Frenchie Field. You weren't allowed back then, for people who don't know about the Immaculate Reception, two offensive players couldn't touch it simultaneously or it was ruled incomplete.
Yep.
And everybody thought, that it was Frenchie Fuqua, then a Raider defensive back, and then Franco made the catch. So when he caught it off the ground, I thought it was going to be a sack on 4th and 10. Sure. And he went to the end zone. I was like, oh, my gosh. And then when they ruled it a touchdown, I remember I walked out into my back alley. I can tell you if we went there right now where I was standing and was in tears and frustrated because the Steelers beat my Raiders. Now, all these years later, you think about back and how good Raiders would have been great to win it. Think about this real quick, Grant, about what Franco was part of. Hall of Famers and great players. Chuck Noll, the coach. The kicker and punter, Roy Jarrella and Larry Walden, were both really good. They had Larry Brown at tight end and tackle. John Kolb, Mike Webster. Big Benny Cunningham was part of that. Stallworth and Swan, both Hall of Famers. Franco Harris, a great player and a war veteran in Rocky Blyer. Dwight White, Ernie Fats Holmes, L.C. Greenwood, Mean Joe Green, Andy Russell, Jack Ham, Jack Lambert, Mike Wagner, Donnie Shell, Mel Blunt. It's a Pro Bowl team. Wonder they never friggin' lost. Good. I'm telling you, you can tell me all you want. Right. There's no better roster in the history of football.
I agree.
Mike Wagner, little white dude, run around and knock the hell out. Donnie Shell beat the dog shit out of you. Mel Blunt. I saw him back. He was a representative of the of the NFL, like security guy for the NFL after his career. Grant, we're at UC Irvine when I was at USC. We're practicing in the summer. All of a sudden, this dude walks up and he's standing on the sidelines with a long 3/4 like leatherish coat. It just dressed up in slacks and a shirt. And we're practicing. You look over, and it looked like, you remember that show Spencer for Hire? Hawk. Remember Hawk, the big bald dude? And I'd never seen him in person, but I watched Blunt on TV. I look over there and we're like Jack Del Rio, a bunch of us. Who is that? So he addresses us after practice. He's about 6'3.5", 6'4", about 220. Looked like he's a waist about the size of 28 inches. And I thought, now this is Mel friggin' Blunt. He looked like Hawk with that big old long gun, Spencer Fire, bald head, and just as gentlemanly as could be. But he was great and big before corners were that big, right? And he was long, and I thought, then you go through that roster, you think, how did the Steelers ever even lose a friggin' game? But those Steelers, man, they got my Raiders with those stories. Hey. I remember Mel Blunt the very first time I laid eyes on him, and I remember the first time I met Franco Harris. So, we can't leave out the quarterback of that team who happened to win 4 Super Bowls, me in the Super Bowl, Terry Bradshaw. So you're not going to find a team that was loaded with better players than that.
Except for maybe the team you played on at USC. Whenever you mention names of the guys that you played with during your tenure, how the hell would USC ever lose a game? You guys never did, right?
Well, if we could have taken USC and just thrown it into the NFL from like my freshman year and used all the seniors, juniors, sophomores, and freshmen, we might have been the Pittsburgh Steelers back then. We were pretty good. We were loaded with guys. And then if we could just steal from a year, like throw Ronnie Lott and Dennis Smith in there, we'd be pretty damn good. And maybe we could steal Caleb Williams and throw him on there. We're loaded. We finally got a quarterback. We're good to go. Or Carson Palmer. Yeah, we were pretty damn studly, man. We had some pretty good players on that roster. But the Steelers, God bless Franco Harris. I'm sorry for his family so close to Christmas.
Sean, you're the best. I love you, man. Merry Christmas. I just love doing shows with you and talking about real life, not always about sports. We talk about the important issues, and that means the world to me, and so do you, buddy. So enjoy your weekend.
And rock bottom doesn't last, guys. It too shall end. So hang in there. Be kind to one another. Grant, thank you. You're family to me. I love you. Thanks for allowing me to share these stories into our listeners and viewers. This means a lot. And Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. And I'll talk to you next week, brother. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy Santa Claus because he's about to deliver, my man. I appreciate it.
Take care. All right. Thanks, good stuff, Sean Salisbury. I could talk to Sean all day long. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Before we move on to Ryan and Sacktown and talk some Kings basketball, I want to talk to you about Fosters and Paws. They are a group of animal advocates. They work primarily with dogs and shelters. They work with young people to teach them the benefit of animals. They do a lot of fabulous things. Just go to fostersandpaws.org/adopt. They're looking for adopters. They're looking for fosters. Again, fostersandpaws.org/adopt. With that said, I'll tell you, Ryan and Sacktown's got the toughest job. On Wednesdays, he has to replace Jerry Reynolds, and now he's going to come on and try to, do one better than Sean Salisbury, which that's not possible today, my friend. Not possible.
No, not at all. That could have gone for the entire show. That's amazing stuff. Great stories from Sean. Amazing to hear. And that's the type of guy he is from all accounts. I was thinking, though, Grant, did you or Sean ever give John Clayton any crap for that ESPN commercial? Because that's the one commercial I think of.
I didn't, but Sean did, and Sean has talked about that in the past. It was vintage John. Again, hanging out with all those folks at ESPN during that time, this was amazing. The Yankees were playing the Padres that year in the World Series, and Dennis Eckersley was in ESPN studios and he was doing post-game shows on radio. And I was actually watching, and I'm a diehard Yankees fan. I was actually watching the World Series with Eck. All right. So Dennis Eckersley and I are hanging out together watching the World Series when I was there. Met John Clayton, Chris Berman, Chris used to come in and do a segment with us on Sunday nights after he got off his set. Tom Jackson, Mort. It was incredible to be in that. Mike Golick. I can go on, but I was doing shows with Tony Bruno, and I was like, oh my gosh, Tony was like a god back then. So it was a great experience. But John Clayton was one of the guys I met, and we used to go drink beer after the shows and share stories. And John was just the best. He was awesome.
That's so great. He comes off, or he came off the same way he obviously came off in person with you guys. So rest his soul.
Yeah. All right. We got basketball tonight, the Kings and the Wizards, who played last night, and they lost to the Jazz. This is their third game in 4 nights. And again, when you talk about Washington right now, you're only thinking about 2 players, Bradley Beal and Kyle Kuzma. I put this in the same category as I put Monday night and Wednesday night. The Kings lost on Monday, beat the Lakers on Wednesday. There's no excuse to lose to Washington. They've lost now, 11 of 12 games? No excuse.
Yeah, exactly. They're on a long road trip. They've lost 11 of 12. Porzingis still questionable unless you've seen any different with an illness. So yeah, the Kings are going to be playing the Kings tonight. As long as they come out, play their game, this should be a W, and hopefully get some of those starters some rest, especially Sabonis heading into back-to-back games with Denver.
Looking forward to being right back on this stream with you after the game. We had over 22,000 people on the 3 platforms, Facebook Live, Periscope on Twitter, and right here on YouTube. So, I mean, I just can't thank the support that we're receiving for doing these shows. I mean, those are big time numbers. And I just want to say thank you again to everyone that joins Ryan and myself after the games, because it's great. I enjoy doing that, and I really enjoy doing it. Fans obviously like doing the shows more when the Kings win, and I think that would be the case tonight.
Yeah, it should be again. Look for Hachimura Rory for the Wizards to possibly be that hustle guy off the bench and cleaning up boards, but the Kings should come out on top. I mean, there's not really any way to cut it other than that. But yes, everybody on the stream, for the post-game shows, for this show, thank you so much. We have a lot of fun doing it. Love seeing your comments, and all of you are just as big of a part of the show as we are.
Absolutely. And again, the people we get internationally, thank you so much, because we know that, it's wacko times that you're watching us sometimes with the time difference. I mean, we literally have people from all over the world. Wagga says needs a 49er. We need a 49ers post-game show. We were talking about maybe doing that once we get to the playoffs, Wagga. So good hearing from you, buddy. Happy holidays, Jeff, everyone else that has been so kind to follow us. And we're looking at your messages, Kent, everyone else. Thank you very much. And again, one of the problems with starting to mention names, people are going to feel slighted. Oh, they didn't mention my name. Trust me, I may not mention your name, but I'm thinking about you. And I will tell you that we appreciate you. So on that note, Ryan, we'll talk after the game, buddy. I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to get ready to do my show on Listen App.
Sounds good, Grant. Talk to you after the game.
Yep, absolutely. So thank you very much, everyone. Really appreciate your support. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Make it a great, great weekend. And I hope you can join me and Ryan right here after the game on YouTube Live. Thank you so much. Appreciate your support. And it's always great having you right here on If You Don't Like That with Grant Napier. So long, everybody.